so many things to unravel with this film. Thank you for reminding us that it was made in 1970. And I think that would be maybe the central point of my first question. What I appreciate, one of the things I appreciate the most about this film is its radical approach, its clearness in its statements, in its demand. So, like, if today a young film student goes and says, I want to make a film about post-colonialism or restitution, then, you know, there might be access, there'll be places he or she can go and be allowed to do his or her studies. Which environment did you find yourself in when you decided you want to make this film? Did you have a community that you were researching with, discussing with, debating with, that maybe helped you co-create this film? Or was it somehow, like the way you outsmarted the museum guy, were you like outsmarting your surrounding all the time in order to be able to make this film?
Well, I think that I must, pay tribute to the Caribbean community in London who contributed when they heard about, because I was part of a group called the Black Unity and Freedom Party. I went and reported back to them and I said, hey, this is what I've seen in the museum and it's going to cost me some money. So they all mobilized and they supported the idea. So finally I was able to pull something together and then enter the museum. But I must say that when I entered the museum, the basement for the first time, I was amazed at it was like another city under London. The basement, had vast, like small lanes and boxes. I mean, hundreds of thousands of, it's unbelievable. And you see, there will be a lot of museum security men riding in electric trolleys, moving one object or moving, facts, artifacts from here and there. And I mean, the day we spent there, we spent about a quarter of that day, not filming, but opening the boxes and discovering things for ourselves. I mean, it was incredible. Just to touch these things created by our ancestors that has never been touched by our people before. I was so emotional. So the commentary that you heard in the film was written when I was in the basement. The commentary unraveled in my consciousness. So when I came out of the basement, I had already worked out what the narration is going to be.
The message was clear. It was in the boxes. It was sent down to you. How did you? Because a political film like this with a very clear, radical political statement testifies somehow to having a mission and a goal with your tool as a filmmaker. You have learned to use the camera. You want to tell a certain kind of stories. Did this energy, was it born right there at that moment at the museum, or did you bring it with you from Ghana, and through which experiences?
Well, that's a very interesting, it's a good question. I was born into a political and artistic family in the Gold Coast before independence. My father was a political activist. He was the chairman of the first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was the chairman of the Nkrumah's party in the district where we live in. So at the age of 4, he used to carry me on his shoulders to take me to political rallies where Nkrumah and other political activists used to speak. And at the age of 4, I remember hearing people shouting, freedom, freedom, freedom. And I didn't understand what was happening, but it was something that obviously, subconsciously, was being imbibed into my system. So as I grew up, I realized also that my father was a movie fanatic. There was a cinema which was about 5 minutes walk from our house. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday, my father was in the cinema. He was taking us, I used to sit on him, sometimes I fall asleep, but he was taking us there all the time. So that's how the cinema was introduced to me as a child. So when I grew up and I went to school and went to high school, I went to high school in Cape Coast. Cape Coast is the area where most of the colonial explorers like the Portuguese, the Dutch, were there, and the British, of course. And there were castles there. So I used to visit the Cape Coast Castle. And it's through the visit of these castles, going into the dungeons, I began to emotionally become very, very much agitated. So all these elements contributed to the formation of my idea, I think, to the person I am today. So when I went to England, to the film school, all these things culminated eventually in this documentary that you have seen. I've made other films apart from this, but at one stage, the film, talking about distribution, nobody was interested in distributing the film in England. All the distribution companies, I approached them. I used to carry the film. It was a celluloid film, so it was on a reel. So I used to carry it under my arm from one distribution company to the next. Oh, you don't want to touch it. So I was very, very depressed, And then I decided, okay, let me take it back to my country. Let me take it back to Ghana. At least go and show it there. When I arrived in Ghana, I went straight to the national broadcasting station, the Ghana television station, and I met the director of the station. And I told him that, well, I've just shot this film on African art and I want to show it on Ghana television. And he said to me, look here, young man, you just can't come here with some rubbish to go and show. We have got important programs like Tom Jones. What do you call this? These American cowboy movies, the Magnificent Seven. Bonanza, KuK, and all that kind of stuff. So we are not interested in this kind of thing. I said, look, I'm a Ghanaian citizen and I have a right to put my work on the screen. So he said, okay, he's going to organize a preview of the film. So he appointed a representative, and the German foundation, Freddie Ebert Foundation, provided the venue for the screening of the film. So at the screening of the film, I invited Ghanaians who are working in the film industry when they came. When the film was screened, they gave me a standing ovation. And when they left, I went back to see the director, and I said, no, the following day, there was a big editorial in the newspaper. Excuse me. A big editorial promoting and supporting the film. So I took the newspaper, National Daily, to him and said, look, this is what the National Daily is saying. It says, look here, you have to be careful. You can't come here and destroy the relationship between us and the British. You are coming here to cause confusion. We have a very good relationship with the British government, so you better be careful. You want to come here and start some foolishness here. I said, oh, really? They said, look, if I were you, I would jump on the plane and go back to London fast, because the security people are watching you. Okay, so I left. When I got to London, I was surprised that the West Africa magazine, which was a very popular magazine in the 70s, widely read by the diplomatic community and etc., had published the film, and they have in the publication said it was banned in Ghana. So that made the film very popular. The controversy about the banning, I got people were writing to me, and in fact, the first African country to buy a copy of the film was Nigeria. Nigeria actually ordered a copy, for their national museum. And of course, in England, none of the distributors were interested. So I decided to go to the US.
Yes, I was wanting to circle back to that. After finishing the film, the first initial screening in London, what happened? Who did you invite? Who saw it? How were the reactions?
Okay, the first initial screening was at the Africa Center. The Africa Center was a cultural center, but it was owned by the British, you know. And they organized, the director of the Africa Center was a British woman who was very, very supportive of the idea of the film, because she had also read the West African magazine. So she organized a premiere, and it was very well attended.
But you also invited the museum. Mr.
I invited the museum authorities. They sent 4 representatives. When they arrived at the theater, I gave them the front seat. I told them to sit in the front. They said, no. They went all the way to the back seat. So when the film came on and they heard the commentary and narration, I was watching them. I saw them putting on it was in the winter time, you know. They were putting on their overcoat and boom, they vanished from the hall. So I knew that the message, you know, has been well received. So there was a big standing ovation, and people made contributions to me, because at that time the film was not a married print. It was, in those days there used to be a projector called double bond projector. You put the sound on one reel and then the film on another reel. So people made contributions, and out of that contribution I was able to make a married print of the film. So that was...
And that's the one you took to Ghana?
That's the one I took to Ghana, and then the rest is history.